All right, welcome to Uncovering the Human Behind the Behavior, where we're going to be talking about modernizing your approach to qualitative research. So at Insights Now, we believe if we can change the way we look at humans and our beliefs about why products succeed, we will improve our speed and success to market. So this webinar on modernizing your qualitative approach is designed to give you a new perspective and help you become more successful. Now, if you've never attended a GoToWebinar session before, you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen that you will have a little float over window. In the bottom of that window is a chat box. If you have questions for us that you want us to try to address as we go through the webinar or at the end of the webinar, go ahead and type them in there and we will see those. If that's in your way, blocking your view, there's a little orange arrow up top and you can click on that and that will slide it off your screen so you can see better. We've got two presenters with us today. I'm Greg Stuckey. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Insights Now, and with me today is Karen Lynch. She is our Senior Director of Qualitative Insights.
Thank you, Greg, for that introduction. I'm delighted to be here. I'm quite excited to be a part of Insights Now, actually, as well. What we're noticing is that we're seeing this massive resurgence in qualitative research at our organization. And for some, that might be surprising. A lot has been said in the media, for one, that focus groups are dead, and maybe there's a perception in the industry that qualitative has lost some of its oomph, certainly some of its panache as it maybe had about 10, 15 years ago when everybody was really excited about the methodologies that were considered qualitative. We've also heard, in the past, I would say maybe 5 years or so, clients saying that, you know what, some of these questions that we're asking aren't giving us anything new. We've heard this before, particularly in warm-ups during some research that we've done where we're really working on getting rapport, but clients are feeling a little bit like they're hearing the same thing. Now, some people might say if you're hearing the same thing, you need to start asking different questions, right? And in some cases, that's true. But in other cases, it's largely because people are still listening for the same answers, regardless of what the question is. They're listening to what might validate what they already think they know or what confirms some of their biases, or listening for what they've heard before. So sometimes they're hoping to hear something new, but largely they're almost expecting not to. So that's why we need to modernize our qualitative approach. When you think about that need, right, in our industry, the definition of an insight, that need for insights, the definition of an insight that we use is it's an unexpected human truth against which we can take action. So we need this modern approach so that we can reveal those unexpected human truths. Insights are the currency of innovation. So no new insights means no new innovation. And by innovation, we're not just talking about new product innovation, right? But we're talking about innovative thinking that could be, new strategies or new marketing kind of positionings or new messages or new messaging strategies. So innovative thinking across the board needs insights. And if you're not getting those insights, we need to figure out how else can we get those human truths revealed. That's what brought us here today. So one thing we're not going to be talking about today is, if we advance, I can't advance, Greg. I don't know why. There we go. One thing we're not going to be talking about today are new methods. There's a lot of talk about new qual being new methods in qualitative research. So there's new technology that fuels some methodological innovations in this space, if you will. And those can be really exciting. So a lot of researchers, and we're among them, turn to those new methodologies when it's appropriate, when the objectives warrant using them. And in many cases, they're great, but they don't always bring insights. Sometimes what they bring is excitement and maybe a newness, but it's not necessarily the insights that you're looking for. What we're talking about with a modern approach to qualitative is a new mindset, a new way of looking at what we're doing, that new lens that Greg was talking about in the beginning. So it's taking what you learn with new methods, but it doesn't prevent you from using traditional methods. It allows you to really leverage both of those. It's going to breathe new life into your qualitative, whether, again, it's using a new method or a traditional method. It's going to give you new ears with which to hear consumers or individuals in your group, the humans that we're talking about. And we're going to get you those insights with that new lens, that new mindset, those insights, those unexpected human truths necessary for innovative thinking. So our goal, if you will, for this, not only this webinar, but also in the research, the qualitative research that we do, is to uncover the humans behind the behavior. Because a human-centered approach does lead to these innovations. There are innovations that resonate more deeply with people. And when you do that, when you have that human-centered approach and you have results that resonate with people, that's what drives brand engagement and growth. So here's how we do this. We uncover these truths behind human behavior by modernizing our qualitative approach. And this is what we're going to be talking about the rest of this webinar today. We're going to be looking at an approach that has empathy as its foundation and incorporates this behavioral perspective that focuses on journeys, the customer journey in the way that we have them expanded. It's talking about the moments along those journeys, those key moments, and what happens in those, the motivations, if you will, and also these experiences, and a lot of these experiences are largely sensorial. So let's dissect it a little bit, how we put all of this together. In a modern qualitative approach, we have, I'm sorry, Greg, that you're advancing for me. I don't have the advancing controls. In this modern qualitative approach, we start with people, right? At the very bottom of this circle here, that's our foundation. That's where we land. We stay focused on individuals' humanity. Okay, we look at the people that we're talking to. We get to those human truths by making sure the humans are at the center of everything that we do. We take a look at the customer journey, right? The expanded scope of a journey to reveal those new influencers or influencing elements that happened along those journeys. We dig into the full context of the moments along people's journeys. And for that, again, we'll be talking about what motivates individuals in the decisions that they're making along those journeys. And then finally, those experiences. We want to take a look at the total sensorial experience a person has with a brand or with a product or within a category that happens in one of those key moments along those journeys. And if we do this, if we take a look at these journeys and these moments and these experiences that an individual human has, what it'll do for you, you'll develop this trust that the innovations, and again, in all of the different definitions of innovations, not just new product development, but innovative strategies or innovative messaging, that everything is human-centered, which will allow you to make decisions knowing that your view is expansive, that you have knowledge about what motivates people in different situations, not just at that key moment of purchase or that key moment of use, but at other moments along their journey. And also it gives you this holistic perspective on how their sensorial experience factors into the puzzle. This all starts with empathy. So let's just start there for a minute. As a foundation, we'll talk about empathy. Here we go. When you're being empathetic, okay, you're showing this ability to understand and share the feelings of someone else. You're metaphorically trying to walk in their shoes. So empathy is kind of a buzzword right now in the design thinking industry. It has been since it really launched, where you're trying to understand people in the context of a design challenge, right? You're a designer and you're deliberately trying to humanize target consumers because you know that humanization will help become stimuli for ideation. So as market researchers, we're always focused on understanding people, right? But we want to get beyond learning just what they think and feel about products, beyond what they use or why they use it or when they use it or how often they use it. We want to shift our mindset from one that's filled with respondents or participants or target users or non-users that are segments or cells, and some of those buzzwords we use when we recruit. But we want to focus on them as human beings, again, beyond just what they think or what they say or what they feel, but human beings with mindsets of their own that are individuals with passions and hopes and fears and aspirations and goals. And we want to seek some sort of a connection with them so that we know that the ideas we have and the decisions we make will resonate with them. So one of the things that we want to do is practice active listening. It's all about making a connection with your consumers or with your participants or with the men and women or children that we talk to in qualitative settings. It's about active listening. So when we, as moderators or people that have had that role of moderating, we are all about active listening. We're developing rapport, and we're having conversations with people, right? Some of the people in the industry know that I'm always talking about having conversations with people. That's a two-way dialogue to get that rapport and to facilitate that connection making. But what about on the other side of the mirror where it's a one-sided thing, right? You're listening, you're taking it all in. And what would help in the back room to your ability to actively listen with an empathetic ear? So there's some questions that you can be asking yourself in the back. There's some questions that you can focus on when you're listening. The who are we learning from? What do you know about their life? What's going on with them presently? What are the things that they are situationally dealing with? What led them to this place on their journey? What are their fears, their worries? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What behaviors do they talk about? And who is influencing those behaviors, either things that they're hearing or reading or watching other people doing? But the key is how you can relate your experiences to those experiences. Very often there are people that are being interviewed that you can say, you know what, I can relate to what they're saying. If you capture the moments that you can relate to, you'll get to some of those insights because there's a human truth behind them. We have an aid that we'll be sending something along these lines out to you as a PDF, as a kind of a thank you for attending our webinar today, just so you know. But it's going to be something that you can use to nurture your sense of empathy when you're listening to research and engaged with the research studies, and help you to kind of reflect upon those connections. So just watch your inbox for that communication piece from us. That'll happen after the webinar takes place.
Great. And so let's talk about an example. One of my favorite research projects and series that we did was focused on understanding the human nature of what happens around appetizers. So uncovering the human using appetizers as a foray into new product innovation ideas, new opportunities. So we started a research with the goal of really wanting to gain greater empathy for all the people who use appetizers. So we went to parties where appetizers were being served. We commissioned people that were hosting parties to videotape those parties, videotape a day in the life of an appetizer at their party. We had guests at parties videotape other guests about their experience with appetizers. We use things like misdirection also, telling people the party is focusing all on these new beverages when in reality we were studying the appetizers and how people were selecting appetizers and what they were experiencing, both observationally and then also in deep dive conversations with those folks afterwards. So what did we learn about empathy? We learned that there are several types of people, right? People who take on different roles in an event where appetizers are being served. So of course the most common is the host, right? You have the host of the event. The host is almost always very nervous, very stressed, very rushed. They really don't have time to see if their guests are truly enjoying themselves or not. Specifically when it comes to appetizers, they're not really even understanding how the guests are interacting with those. And because of that, the appetizers actually are a really big contributor to the stress of the entire event. When do I start the prep? If you have to have a hot one, like what time do I put that in the oven, right? When do you start cooking? Are the guests going to like them? Do I have enough variety? Did I pick things that are too strange, et cetera, so forth? What if one of my guests bring appetizers that compete with my appetizers, right? So all these things around appetizers and the host, and there's this really innate stress that's just burgeoning right there. There's this tension that's there. So understanding that empathy then allowed us to understand, well, what are the opportunities then to help that host? We also have other types of guests, people who are coming to the party, people who are not really sure what they should bring. Can I bring an appetizer? Should I bring an appetizer? And they're filled with worry. What if the host doesn't need an appetizer? What if what I bring, I'm the only one who likes it, or people think I'm strange because I like this particular appetizer? If I show up without one, is that rude or not rude, et cetera, so forth. So you also have all this emotional tension with all of the guests coming to the party around appetizers. Now, it's interesting, all these different roles that surround appetizers have all these negative emotions, all these tensions associated with them, except there's one guest, one role at the party where there's no tension, and that's the best friend, right? This is the host's best friend. And it's really interesting. What was really surprising in this research was that it's really the best friend's role when it comes to appetizers, especially, to essentially alleviate all those tensions. It's the best friend who goes to the counter and starts eating the appetizers that signals when the other guests feel comfortable eating them. It's the best friend who is alongside the host and seeing what those tensions are and alleviating them, because she's focused or he's focused on making sure that the host is really having a good time and is delivering well, right? So by gaining empathy for that best friend role, now in this research, that was a huge insight, because it allowed the manufacturer that we were working with to target that specific person in their messaging, right? And incorporate that person into the visuals of the advertising, making sure that the host, who often goes to the best friend to get ideas for appetizers, had that completeness. And so that was a really great insight that really drove that research forward.
That's cool. So now we're going to layer on top of that. Again, empathy is the foundation. Let's start with these journeys. Now, customer journeys are kind of all the rage right now. A lot of our clients have said, we need to map our customer journeys, and, journey mapping is sort of a thing right now. We talk a lot about, touch points, consumer touch points along the way on a journey, and all those points where the consumer or the user interacts with a brand. And we've embraced, with some of our clients, some of the diary studies, some of the tracking studies where we're monitoring that usage over time. And we like the snapshots that those things provide. We like that we look at some of these moments. But if we look at too small of a frame and only one key moment, like the key moment of purchase or that first moment of use, instead of all the possible moments along the way, then we limit ourselves and we limit our innovation or innovative thinking, right? We miss what happens before and what happens after. So we need to broaden our definition of journey and look at it in its entirety. Here's how we do that. We're talking about modernizing our view of the journey overall. So a modern approach to qualitative looks at the journey in its entirety, kind of the vastness of it, and it considers a person's journey into the category and then potentially out of the category, and in a way that might be surprising to you. So we think about what gets us into a category. Those we call our on-ramps. And again, when I say surprising, I can give you an example. I'm a Twizzler fan. Everybody who knows me knows I really like Twizzlers. I've liked them for as long as I can remember. My on-ramp, and when I say as long as I can remember, my on-ramp was actually me as a child sitting in the front seat of my mother's car running errands, opening the glove compartment and seeing a bag of Twizzlers in there. It was like I would get into her car, open that glove compartment, take out my Twizzlers, sometimes hand one to her, but it was always like a little gift every time I got in the car. I got a treat every time I got into my mother's car. That was my on-ramp into a category that started to build my customer loyalty at a very young age. That's an on-ramp. It's really this expanded view. It did not start when I was on my own with purchasing power for the first time, or with my first discretionary income and ability to purchase them for myself. It had nothing to do with that. It had something to do with something that I had deep, deep memories for. So it's a holistic view, even with the on-ramps. Now, let me explain what an off-ramp is. So off-ramps is the exit to the category, if you will. And if you picture what an exit is, sometimes it's literally like you just smoothly get off a highway that you're on, right? Other times you're at this roundabout, you might sail right through it, or you might have something that happens to you that's a little bit jarring, right? Let me give you another example from kind of a personal story. I also used to really like microwave popcorn. I say used to. I still like microwave popcorn, but I am not in the category anymore. Here's why. I loved that it was convenient, it was fast, relatively healthy compared to other snacks. I could, have a pre-measured serving that, worked really well for me, until the day my husband decided we weren't going to be a family that had a microwave anymore. We were going to be that family that was microwave free. I came home from a business trip, poof, no more microwave. The kids were like, Dad decided we don't have a microwave anymore. So I was like disrupted from a category that I had been in by something that influenced me beyond my control, but I had this jarring, disruptive event that pulled me out of the category. That's a classic off-ramp.
So let's talk about the appetizer example and continue that storyline, right? And look at the entire journey from the vantage point of the appetizers. So if we go back and look at this in its entirety, in the research, yes, we were just looking at the actual entertaining event. But in order to hear the whole journey, in order to get at the every little possible piece, right? That memory that goes all the way back to the childhood possibility. We had to do memory-based exercises. We had to do backward thinking. We had to take a person back through time. We also needed to look at people who were no longer using certain types of appetizers or appetizers at all, especially pre-purchased appetizers or pre-made appetizers from the store, to understand what some of those off-ramps also were. So looking through that whole story, some of the on-ramps that we saw in our appetizer journey was things like, my favorite team made the playoffs, and I'm finally in a position where I am going to celebrate, and I haven't celebrated before, and how do you celebrate? And appetizers become something then that is considered a staple. Well, if your team made the playoffs and you're going to have a party, you got to have appetizers. Well, what are appetizers? I've never even looked at that section of the store. And that's one of the on-ramps we saw. So it was great because now you can start tying, right, opportunities to communicate with people, opportunities to build products with certain types of on-ramps. Kids starting school. All of a sudden, your kids are starting, especially in maybe a new classroom or a new grade, making a transition into a new school. And all of a sudden, you as a mom have all these other new moms that you don't know that you want to get to know. And all of a sudden, appetizers become the way that you use to have small social gatherings and break the ice and get to know other moms, right? Buying a house in a new neighborhood, same thing, right? When you buy a new house, what do you have, right? Housewarming party. Well, appetizers can be a key on-ramp when you're doing those housewarming, moving to a new neighborhood, moving to a new section, and especially if you are the first-time buyer, right? First time getting into an apartment with discretionary income, first time getting into a house with discretionary income, and you want to celebrate, and you, especially in those young days, don't really know what appetizers to bring, right? It's something completely brand new and foreign. And so you go out and you seek help. Best friend role, hint, hint, comes back into play. Now, some of the off-ramps, these are where it gets actually really exciting, because the off-ramps are often what happens for categories that have really, really long cycles. So appetizers, as an example, you get into it fairly early in life, and you're using appetizers. It's just kind of a natural part of your process. But sometimes there are really jarring experiences, really disruptive experiences that stop you from using either certain types of appetizers or get you out of the category in its entirety. So one of the things that we saw in this research was these key moments when, for instance, the host who was making the appetizer had to change her shirt or her blouse because appetizers dripped on it, right? And so the messiness of a specific product caused her, with a product that, remember, is already causing her a lot of stress, to say, I'm just not even going to deal with it anymore. So it gets the host out of the appetizer business. Another one was the day after, right, or the evening of, where you're throwing away a huge amount of unused appetizers. That leaves this visceral, I didn't like them anyway, and now I'm throwing them away, and I wasted my time and my money, and I'm just not going to deal with it anymore. And it kicks people out of the category. And then finally, and most importantly from a behavioral standpoint, was this best friend role, right? When the best friend moves away, all of a sudden, appetizers, right? The best friend is actually kind of the key to making a successful party. If the best friend moves away, parties happen less often. And if you're relying on that best friend to tell you and help you with the appetizer part of your journey, then boom, that goes away as well. So those are key off-ramps in that particular space. So another piece that we want to look at for bringing products to market faster with greater focus and targeting is going to be to focus on the key moments along that journey. And we're really excited that people are talking a lot more about moments today, but we want to give you a little bit more information about what's going to be a more modern view of understanding moments. So in a traditional qualitative approach, it's really about the demographic basics, if you will. People talk about what's the occasion or situation that a person is in, what's the setting, who are the people in that setting, what's the need state. Those are all really good pieces of information. Yet the modern qual is going to take a much deeper contextual experience, right? What is the setting for the story? What are the actions and activities and behaviors that are happening in that sequence of events? What are the person's personal goals, hence need states? What are the tensions? What do they believe they ought to be doing that they are not actually doing, right? So what are your thoughts versus your actual actions? What's the consideration set? What's the real, true, honest consideration set in that space? And as you go to study this, you're going to find that the real consideration set is never just the category that you are designing a product to live in a grocery store. So the store-based categories are usually a subset of the actual consideration set that people have. And then the final piece that most people overlook when they're looking at moments is the motivation to actually make a choice. So a lot of people think of moments as just a point in time, but the real meat, the real wow in the moment is understanding what's motivating a person to pick between the items in their consideration set. And when you jump into those motivations, that's when the new information comes out. That's when you can understand what's going to be really different about this innovation that we're going to try and uncover.
So if we go back to that party and we imagine from the point of view of a guest, a scenario where two people in the same town are guests at a party, they have overlapping friends, same event, and they have been reminded via Evite that they were supposed to bring an appetizer. They have an hour, both of these people. They know they need to get something that is quick, easy, portable, that people will love, and they have to make a choice. So one person is motivated to make a safe choice, same amount of time as the other person, kind of same pressures, but they want something that nobody will hate, and they want something that's going to help them avoid social embarrassment. So what are they most likely going to choose? They're probably going to choose chips and dip. They'll probably run into the grocery store, maybe even grab Tostitos, chips and salsa right there. They know it's easy. It will avoid social embarrassment. Everybody's happy. Nobody really complains about that type of a party dish. But then we think about somebody else. Again, same scenario, but they're motivated by a need or a desire to impress other people. They want to choose something that reflects their style or something that shows they have good taste, maybe get some oohs from some of the other people there. What do they go for? They go for, a quality cheese plate from a local specialty cheese shop that has, a little bit of, fig spread on the side, maybe a gift knife. They've spent a bit more money on it. Again, they're motivated by a need to impress, even in the same kind of situation. Not everyone compromises on quality for convenience is really the human truth behind that. In the same scenario, different motivations help people to make different decisions or kind of influence people to make different decisions. So if you consider the motivations in the moment, you can, again, broaden your possibilities for innovative thinking.
Right. So what do you do with those motivations? Now you got them. And now you want to start thinking about how do I build a product or a new idea or a new service around that core motivation. And this is where that translation becomes super important, and you need to consider the total sensory experience. So what happens in traditional qual is you typically are going to see discussion guides, and the next time you look at your discussion guide for your next session, take a look, see if this is there. You're going to notice that it's very common for us to present a product to a person, or moderators to present a product to a person and say, well, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Is this a good fit to the concept or not? Now, those are okay questions, but it doesn't get you very far. It doesn't get you that tie between the motivation, right? I want to impress others, and the product qualities and the perceptual sensory experience that's going on with that. Right? So we want to dig deeper. We want to understand what are those cues that signal that core benefit, that the product is designed to deliver against. What are the cues that we have to avoid because it's taking away from the perception that that benefit is going to be delivered? And then what are the emotional connections that we can make with the specific ingredients? And this is where the R&D piece can really be amped up in qualitative, and pieces that a modern approach to qual takes into account that a traditional approach to qual just kind of glosses over because they're focused too much on liking and not enough on connection to the benefits.
If we go to that appetizer kind of example again, and let's focus really on the woman whose goal was to impress. That was her motivation in that moment when she was headed off to that party. There are sensory properties that fit with that, sensory elements of a cheese tray, for instance, and maybe it's a cheese that's particularly creamy that dissolves on the palate, or maybe it's a real chunky cheese, something that when it comes off it's in big hunks, right? But there's also elements that should be avoided if they want to kind of focus on that motivation to impress. Maybe it's too crumbly, right? Then becomes too messy on a cracker. It falls all over and could embarrass people there. Maybe it's too gooey. Maybe it has kind of a skunky flavor, or stinky. Now, what's interesting about stinky is, for the right audience, stinky is a great quality of a cheese, a great sort of sensory cue, because it could show a quality cheese. But stinky could also be perceived by a different audience as a completely unappealing cue. So what companies have to do is make that intuitive choice for the right target audience. And this is all how you build that product, right? You connect these dots between the journey, the moments along that journey, and then the sensory cues that are present in the product experience. And if you think about, at the core, the human that is choosing it, buying it, showing it, sharing it, maybe even throwing it away, how does the whole puzzle go together? I know we probably have about 5 minutes left here, so let me just take you through a quick example. And this one would be from the personal care category, hair color. If you think about the person who colors the hair, the woman that colors their hair, with an empathetic ear, you might hear about their worries, their fears, their anxieties. You might hear about their wants, their needs, their aspirations. And if we listen to all of that, and then with this modern qualitative approach, we can think about the journey and the on-ramp. Is it the look in the mirror one morning that points out kind of a gray hair or a wrinkle, or maybe it's a divorce, right? And a whole new life, whole new me. Maybe it's a yoga class because the yoga instructor who's so fit and awesome has this great ombre look that she wants to be like her. She has an aspiration there. And if we expand our view of these moments and what's motivating her, is it hiding her age? Is it avoiding embarrassment? Is it a transformation? Or is it, I want to be perceived as somebody who takes risks, who has this sort of, fly by the seat of my pants attitude? What is the motivation in the moment? And finally, we factor in that experience with those hair color products, right? What sensorial elements have to be present? So on the positive side, it would be visually vibrant, glossy, shiny, rich, or maybe on the negative side, it's brassy, dull, things we want to avoid, damaged or frizzy. Those wouldn't help them meet their aspirations or their motivations, right? Texturally, on the positive side, we've got soft, healthy, smooth, and negative, we have dry, kind of limp, or, kind of damaged. We factor in those sensory cues. We consider those motivations in those moments along a journey that could extend from a very young age all the way kind of through the lifetime to kind of the current day and then even beyond. So a modern approach to qual expands our view in all of those areas. It moves beyond what target consumers think and say. It's focused on them as human beings, individuals, with a story that begins and ends, and those motivations in those moments, and then the cues that help win that moment. So recapping, modernize our qualitative approach. We begin with empathy. We remember that journeys have on-ramps and off-ramps and extend over time. We consider motivations in those moments, and we seek to understand those sensory cues throughout the experience.
Right. Thank you very much, Karen. This has been a wonderful session today. I hope you all agree. If you have questions or comments that you'd like to make, we both would love to talk with you about that. We're always available. You can see our email information here on the screen, and we will be following up with you via email as well. So we hope that this webinar was able to change a little bit of the way you looked at humans and your qualitative research, and helps you understand what are some new modern approaches we can take to make our products more successful and move to market much faster. With that, we hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we will look forward to having conversations with you in the future.
Thanks, everybody, for being here today.
All right. Bye-bye.